On May 23rd, 1945, just 15 days after the guns of World War II fell silent, the most powerful police chief in human history was sitting in a British Army interrogation room, wearing nothing but a gray undershirt, underpants, and socks. No medals, no black uniform, no army at his back. Heinrich Himmler, the man who built the Holocaust, who commanded over 1 million SS soldiers, who held the power of life and death over millions, was shivering under a scratchy British Army blanket, eating sandwiches and sipping tea. And somewhere hidden on his body was a tiny glass capsule of cyanide. What happened in that room over the next few hours is one of the most bizarre, chilling, and deeply strange endings in the entire history of the Second World War. A man who orchestrated industrialized mass murder met his end not on a battlefield, not in a courtroom, but in a requisitioned house in the German city of Lüneburg, codenamed the House for Special Purposes. This is that story, and I promise you, it is stranger than anything you have imagined. If you're new to Timeless World, welcome. We dig into the moments of history that textbooks skip over, the raw, unfiltered truth behind the names you recognize. Hit subscribe right now and ring that notification bell, because we drop new episodes every week and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Now, Hasur, let's go back to May 1945. Germany was finished. The Reich was rubble. Adolf Hitler had killed himself in a Berlin bunker on April 30th. The formal German surrender came on May 8, 1945. And Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer SS, architect of the concentration camp system, was second most feared man in Nazi Germany, was on the run. He had tried everything. He had secretly approached the Western Allies in the final weeks of the war, attempting to negotiate a separate peace deal that would keep him relevant, even powerful, in post-war Germany. The Allies wanted nothing to do with him. He had tried to ingratiate himself with Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, Hitler's appointed successor, who ran a rump Nazi government from northern Germany. Dönitz stripped him of all offices on May 6th, so Himmler did what any cornered war criminal does. He tried to disappear. He reduced his personal entourage from hundreds of officers to just 14 loyal men. He shaved off his famous mustache. He swapped his distinctive SS uniform for a mismatched combination of regular German army clothing and a blue civilian raincoat. He covered his left eye with a black eye patch. He obtained forged papers identifying him as one Heinrich Hitzinger, a low-ranking sergeant in the secret field police, recently demobilized. On paper, he was nobody. Just another middle-aged, one-eyed, defeated German soldier trudging home through the chaos. On May 10th, the group of 15 men loaded into 4 large field cars and headed south. What followed was 5 days of absolute misery. The roads were a nightmare, clogged with millions of displaced civilians, defeated German soldiers, destroyed vehicles, and Allied military convoys. What should have been a manageable drive south took 2 full days just to cover 60 miles. When they reached the Elbe River estuary, there was no way to get the cars across. They abandoned the vehicles on the riverbank, paid a local fisherman 500 Reichsmarks to ferry them over, and continued on foot. For the next several days, Himmler, the man who had once commanded the largest SS empire in history, trudged along country back roads, sleeping in barns, beside the road, wherever they could find shelter. He was footsore, exhausted, dirty, and increasingly desperate. By May 18th, the group had reached the small town of Bremervörde, near the Oste River. The problem was that the bridge ahead was guarded by British soldiers, and in the chaos of occupied Germany, Allied checkpoints were everywhere, specifically designed to catch people like Himmler. Here is where the plan began to unravel. The mistake that cost everything. Himmler's disguise had one catastrophic flaw that he didn't know about. In the secret field police, the unit he was impersonating was classified by the Allies as a criminal organization connected to the SD, the SS security apparatus. Any member, no matter how low-ranking, was subject to automatic arrest on sight. By choosing this cover identity, Himmler had unknowingly walked himself straight into a trap. On May 21st, 2 members of the group, Himmler's personal physician and another officer, approached the guarded bridge. They were stopped immediately by Sergeant Ken Bays Brown of British Army Field Security. He checked their papers, recognized the unit stamps, and knew these men had to be arrested. But he was smart enough not to tip his hand. He played it cool, pretended everything was routine, and quietly organized trucks to bring in the rest of the group. One by one, most of Himmler's men were rounded up and taken to a civilian internment camp. But 3 men, Himmler himself and his 2 adjutants, had not yet come forward. They waited at the farmhouse, assuming their comrades had safely passed through. They hadn't. On May 22nd, Himmler and his 2 remaining companions walked into town, heading for the bridge. Before they even reached it, a British patrol stopped them, and they were escorted to a local mill for questioning. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer SS, was now in Allied hands. For a few hours, nobody at the holding camp knew who they actually had. Himmler was just another prisoner, processed, searched, loaded onto a truck with his 2 adjutants, and driven to a special British interrogation facility near the village of Barnstedt. Then everything changed. As Himmler stepped out of the truck at the camp, prisoners already inside pressed against the wire to watch new arrivals. Among them was Karl Kaufmann, the former Nazi district leader of Hamburg, a man who had met Himmler personally on multiple occasions. Kaufmann stared. He recognized the short, slight figure with the eye patch, even without the mustache. Word spread through the camp within the hour. The prisoners knew, and soon enough, so did the British guards. Himmler, realizing the game was over, demanded to see the camp commandant. He was brought before Captain Thomas Sylvester, who described him as small, sickly-looking, and shabbily dressed. Sylvester asked the prisoner his name. Quietly, without hesitation, the man replied, "I am Heinrich Himmler." The cyanide problem. Sylvester immediately called British Second Army headquarters. Within hours, intelligence officers were on their way. But first, a search. Himmler was ordered to strip. His clothing was carefully examined piece by piece, and there it was. A small brass capsule, the kind designed to hold a glass ampule. The capsule was there. The ampule inside was not. The cyanide was missing. Sylvester asked Himmler what the container was for. Himmler smiled thinly and said it was medicine. For stomach cramps. Nobody believed him. The missing ampule was a massive problem. A tiny glass vial measuring roughly 1.5 inches long, small enough to hide almost anywhere on a human body, including inside a cheek. If Himmler bit down on it, he would be dead in seconds. And here is where the story gets genuinely strange. According to later accounts, while British intelligence officers were being summoned to confirm his identity, Himmler was offered and accepted tea and thick sandwiches. He ate, he drank. Think about that for a moment. If he truly had a cyanide capsule hidden in his mouth, how was he eating sandwiches? Either the afternoon tea story was embellished or the capsule was hidden somewhere else on his body, somewhere the initial search had missed. Major Rice, the intelligence officer who arrived with Himmler's photograph and biographical file, confirmed the identification formally. Himmler gave vague answers about his Nazi Party membership number, but his signature matched perfectly, and he gave his correct date of birth without hesitation. He was cooperative, almost disturbingly so. When he talked, he mentioned a letter he had written to Field Marshal Montgomery. He predicted that the Soviet Union would soon be at war with the Western Allies. He tried to project the image of a man who had valuable intelligence to offer, a man worth keeping alive. This was not the behavior of someone planning to die that night. Then Colonel Michael Murphy arrived. Murphy was the chief of British Second Army Intelligence, and he was, by his own later admission, tired and somewhat the worse for wear after celebrating Germany's defeat. He ordered Himmler to strip for a second search. Himmler refused. Murphy threatened to have him forcibly undressed. Himmler relented. Still, no cyanide ampule was found. Murphy made a decision. He would have a doctor conduct a full-body cavity search, but not here, at a secure location in Lüneburg. When a requisitioned house on Ulsenerstrasse, number 31A. The code name for that location was chilling in its simplicity, the house for special purposes. At 10:40 p.m., Himmler was placed in the back seat of a car, squeezed between 2 guards, with Murphy riding up front. As the car moved through the darkened streets of northern Germany, Himmler, who had directed the murder of millions, calmly gave driving directions when Murphy got lost. It was the last journey Heinrich Himmler would ever take, What happened inside that house on Ulsener Strasse in the early hours of May 23rd, 1945? How one of the most monstrous men of the 20th century finally met his end is a story that raises questions that historians are still debating today. And that is exactly where we are picking this up in our next episode. If this video hit you the way I think it did, share it with someone who loves real history. Not the sanitized version, but the full, uncomfortable, fascinating truth. Subscribe to Timeless World so you don't miss the conclusion of this story, because the final chapter of Heinrich Himmler's life is one you will not forget.